Ratios are simply a way of comparing two different numbers, and for the most part, you will treat ratios much in the same way you would fractions. Ratios can be described using this little colon symbol, and you would read that as 20 to 8. When you're translating ratios into equations, you can think of the word to mean simply over. So I can rewrite the ratio of 20 to 8 as 20 over 8. From there, I can reduce my ratio the same way I would a fraction. I can divide both the 20 and the 8 by 4, and I'm left with 5 over 4. So the ratio of 20 to 8 is the exact same thing as the ratio of 5 to 4. Ratios can either be comparing two subsets within a group, or they can be comparing one subset to the entire group. Or we could write that as the part over the part versus the part over the whole. In this case, we start off comparing the men versus the women in the group, or the part versus the part. They tell us that men over women is equal to 4 to 3, or 4 over 3. Then they want us to convert that ratio to the women over the entire total committee. Or they want to know what is the women over the men plus the women. To find our total in the group, we simply add our subsets, or the ratio of the women over the men plus the women will simply be our women, which is 3, over our men, which is 4, plus our women, which is 3, or 3 over 7. This question is asking for the same kind of conversion, but in reverse. They start off with the solution to the alcohol. So we'll call the solution, that's our total. So the total solution over the alcohol, they tell us, is 5 to 2. So if the total is 5 and the alcohol is 2, the remaining part must be 3. So when they ask us what is the ratio of water to alcohol, we can write that as 3 over 2. We've already seen how you can simplify ratios the same way you would simplify a fraction. You can also multiply and divide ratios just like you would fractions. So if I have the ratio of 7 to 2, I write that as 7 over 2. And then to double it, I simply multiply that by 2, or 2 over 1. And then I multiply my top times my top, and my bottom times my bottom. And my final fraction, or my final ratio, is 14 over 2. From there, I could simplify that ratio to be 7 over 1. Cutting a ratio in half follows the same procedure. I start off writing my ratio of 3 to 4, and I write that as 3 over 4. And then to cut it in half, I'm simply going to multiply that ratio by 1/2. And I get the fraction, or the ratio, of 3 over 8. When they ask you to simplify two ratios, all you really have to remember is the word to. That means over. So I could write the ratio of 3/4 to 1/8 as 3 over 4 over 1 over 8. And then following my rules of fractions, I'm simply going to flip and multiply my denominator. So my equation becomes 3 over 4 times, flip the denominator, 8 over 1, or 24 over 4, which I can then reduce to 6 over 1, which of course is the same thing as 6 to 1. This problem might seem more daunting, but it's really not going to require anything we haven't seen before. Translating ratio word problems is a lot easier if you remember that to, that means over, and is, that's your equal sign. So just translating this problem word for word into an equation, I can see I have graduates to non-graduates is 5 to 36. Or G over N is 5 over 36. From there, I can cross multiply, and I get the equation that 5n is equal to 36g. Next, they're going to add 4 additional non-graduates. So that ratio is my number of graduates over my old number of non-graduates plus the 4 they added. And they tell us that is going to be equal to 5 to 38. Or g over n plus 4 is equal to 5 over 38. Just like before, I can cross multiply, and I get the equation that 5n plus 20 is equal to 38g. Since we have 5n in both equations, I can substitute the equivalent of 5n, which is 36g, into my second equation. So I can rewrite that equation as 36g plus 20 is equal to 38g. Or 20 is equal to 2g, or g is equal to 10. The last step is to make sure I'm answering the question they're asking. We solved for g, but they don't want to know g, they want to know n, or the non-graduates. So I'm simply going to plug g into the simplest equation that I can find. For me, that looks like the 5n is equal to 36g. So I can rewrite that equation as 5n is now equal to 360, or n is equal to 72.